Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next session, which is a roundtable discussion on the institutional readiness for the European degree label. Practically, are we ready or not? Because the European degree label is coming either way. For this roundtable, we, in the spirit of flexibility that runs with alliances and creativity also, we're going to start with a presentation that's going to set the stage for the discussion. And the presentation will be given by Dorothy Kelly from the University of Granada, Arcus Alliance, and we thank her for being here. And then together with Romita Yuko and Patricia Pereira, we will move in a roundtable discussion format and continue the conversation with a few questions. Thank you very much, and let's begin. Nice start. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I first thank both UNITA and CIVIS for the invitation to be here with so many friends from this alliance family. Past 6 years. It's always a very great pleasure, and I always learn a great deal from hearing from colleagues. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you also for the flexibility. I hope that the presentation will serve to simply start the conversation. So it is in no way intended to be the answer, but rather I think to address many questions and issues which we are attempting to address in our alliances. Can I also acknowledge the assistance of Ulrike Cravagna from the University of Graz in preparing this presentation. She works in a working group on joint educational offer, and she's also a member of the Austrian National Expert Group on joint programs. So I think it's important there to link the policy to the practice. This is about readiness. Readiness is quite an important word nowadays. Readiness, preparedness, and so on. For European policy in general, as a big center on one little part of European policy. Perhaps we can offer some assistance, some recommendations to move forward. Just very briefly, this is the Arcus Alliance. So we are 9 long-standing research universities in medium-sized cities on the whole. I say on the whole because there is a little bit of difference in size, but we're not big capital cities. It's important because it does change the nature of our institutions and the way in which we engage with our local environment. And we have 2 associate partners, one in Ukraine, here, Academy, and one in the UK, Durham University, both of whom are engaging actively in our activities and also in our joint program. So I think that is also an interesting. So what has Arcus been doing to be ready for the European degree label? This is sort of a moving target, right? Because of course, when we wrote our work in 21-22, it was not very clear what was going to happen here. There was talk of European degree, but there wasn't a call, there hadn't been pilots, and so on and so forth. So it is a little bit of a moving target. But we have been working from day one on joint programs. So just to run through what we've been doing within the Alliance. Firstly, we did decide when the call was published to put together a consortium to participate in the policy experimentation. So we led one of the 6 pilot projects on the European degree at that time. I'm not sure whether it was European degree and labeled in brackets, whether it was European degree, but moving target again, right? And what we did there And I come back here, I think, to something that Olga said earlier. We put together a consortium of 4 alliances. And I think that was the case of most of the pilot projects. Most of them were all together in different alliances with different experience, different expertise, and different approaches to the issues, which was a very, very rich way also of working. That led to ARCAS producing its own position paper on the European degree label. It has also led us to be extremely aware internally within the Alliance when we are developing our joint educational provision that we should align with European standards. It is helping us to put together, and I am not going to say this is being completed, but it is helping us to put together our joint quality assurance system within the Alliance. We have been very actively engaged in the policy discussions at European level, but also at national level. I just said Ulrika, for example, participates in the Austrian National Expert Group, and many of us are participating at national level with our ministries in this whole discussion. And then, of course, this leads to our commitment to excellence, and I'll come back to this perhaps, because excellence is one of those words that has so many different meanings to so many different people. We in the Alliance speak a great deal about excellence in jointness. So our aspiration is to make sure that when we work together, we do it well. So this was our pilot project. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail, simply to say the 4 alliances were ARCAS and Light, Utopia, and CU. We also worked with national ministries, quality assurance agencies, and so on. And we came to some conclusions, and I streamed through some of these conclusions because it has been, to us, very, very comforting to see that many of these conclusions have been taken up and continue to be taken up, and many of them have been mentioned this morning. So we suggested, I don't know if you remember at the time, the first proposal for the criteria had some optional criteria. And we felt this was a rather strange concept. We felt, well, if there are criteria, they should all be, that they should be clear and transparent. They should be clearly formulated, avoiding modality in the formulation, avoiding examples in the formulation. That is not where examples should be given. They can be given as guidelines, but to criteria. That there should be very clear guidelines, and this is what the policy lab is currently working on with the assistance of a group of experts. That the criteria should be organized conceptually. Just a bit of a list, a bit of a mixed list, and I think this has happened. We had suggested 3 groups, but there are 2. Fine, no big issues with that. That the criteria should clearly correspond to the heading under which they are expressed. That all aspects of program organization, management, learning experience, and so on should be included. That the criteria should address also the role of staff. We felt there was a lot of emphasis on students, which of course is essential. Yeah. But in order to run a program, you need the staff. So we felt both academic and professional staff needed to be present. And of course, we needed to be mindful of institutional contexts. Sometimes it felt like each individual program had to solve all the problems. When each program is run in an institutional context, in an alliance or consortium context, and therefore perhaps it does not behold each program to solve all problems. That's something that we also wanted to address. Reference to existing Bologna tools. Well, we've heard this morning. We know that Bologna has not been fully implemented, certainly not as we would like to have seen it implemented. And therefore, we do feel this is a huge opportunity now to come back to some of those basic commitments and ensure that they are coming into force. That the procedures for the evaluation of compliance for the award of the label or the degree, when we finally reach the degree, should be incorporated into European approach procedures, and we've seen this has happened. That the award should be to the program. I think there has been some confusion about this. Is the label for a program or is it for the students? I think clearly it's for the program, which can then, of course, offer a certificate, a diploma supplement, or however we want to do it, to individual graduates and students. But the label is not for students. The label is for the program. And we also, of course, mentioned the very, very touchy area of funding, that there is a need for funding for the preparation of joint programs and for students participate. There's concern here that joint programs can become a very elitist part of education provision. We need to be careful. And can I just, picking up a little bit on what Olga said in her initial address, I think one of the very, very interesting outcomes, impacts of this whole process, of the pilot process, but also of the ongoing co-creation of this idea, is the huge cooperative atmosphere and environment. I think truly, and I have been working in international higher education for quite some time now, I have never experienced such a cooperative atmosphere, with so much joint desire to move forward in a similar direction. I'm not suggesting there is unanimity, because it's not, but I think there is certainly a huge desire to work together. And to me, that is really an important impact of the alliances, but also of this whole initiative around the European. So that's what makes us enthusiastic. You were asking for enthusiasm and so on. That is, I think, what makes us enthusiastic. Okay, so this is just, I'm not going to go through the whole slide. This is a little bit of our roadmap, but just to say that our roadmap towards the joint European degree label, and this has a lot to do with readiness and preparedness, did not start in the current funding period. And my sincere apologies for having to speak about funding periods. I think you're all aware that to many of us, this is a little bit paradoxical. We are being asked to establish a long-term commitment to a long-term cooperative model, and yet we are pitched into 3-year projects, 4-year projects, 2-year projects. So my apologies for subdividing, but I think it is important to say this was at the origin of many of the proposals and many of the activities that we carried out within ARCAS. And I will point to those programs we have already up and running. So new programs which have only arisen because ARCAS exists. Almost all of our universities have been very, very active in joint programs already. And that's part of our readiness. Okay. Many of us have Erasmus Mundus programs. Many of us have a wide range of double and multiple agreements across our universities. I set up first joint program in my university in 1989. So this is not new to us, but within the Alliance and ex novo, within the Alliance, we currently have 3 programs up and running. One is a multiple degree program, where we simply did not manage to get over all the hurdles. But the other 2 are fully accredited joint master's programs leading to a joint degree. So we have a joint master's program in European Studies and a joint master's program in international cybersecurity and cyber intelligence. Each of them involves 4 of the universities from our alliance, different constellations in each case. So just to say, I know some alliances have been very, very brave and set up programs with 9 degree awarding universities. We have not been quite so brave yet. I think 4 works well. We learn from that and then we'll see. Both were accredited in ECAR agencies, of course, using the European approach, one in CEVA in Germany, the other in Lithuania, where we actually took part in a pilot implementation of the European approach by the Lithuanian agency. And again, I think this is a contribution to the whole process. And so currently, we currently have 7 new joint programs under development. 5 at master's level. I think we're all aware that the master's level is the easiest way to move into joint programs, partly because of the drive from Erasmus Mundus, which was a fantastic drive at the time. Although I do think it has managed to establish some standards and criteria that people have some difficulty moving away from. And I'm thinking here of the discussion 2 or 3 institutions as a minimum, for example. But it was a very, very good driver. It is a very good driver. I imagine it will now evolve into something different, given the European degree label and the European degree. But as I said, we have also taken up now the challenge, which I know other alliances have already taken up, of trying to setting up joint bachelor's programs. Perhaps different because of the way, not so much because of the educational offering and the curricular design process and so on, but rather because of what bachelor's programs mean in different national contexts. And many of our national contexts are very married to the bachelor as the basis of higher education. The master's cycle is seen as an optional cycle. It's not part of the full. I'm not speaking for all countries. I'm speaking for some of those. I know perhaps the South rather than the North, but so this means that it's perhaps a little bit harder sometimes to join bachelor's program. But we are working on, we have one which is almost ready now to go for accreditation or evaluation in physics and technology. We're very, very pleased about that. And we have another also under development. We have tried to have a range of disciplines. And I think this is very important. I think what did Kinga say this morning? This is discipline agnostic, I think she said. That was a very interesting expression. It is very important that these approaches should be discipline neutral. Because, well, we in research always complain, particularly those of us in social sciences and humanities, that research assessment is not neutral, but that a lot of the criteria come from a specific field and so on and so forth. We need to be very careful here not to reproduce that kind of proof. And I would just like to finish here with one of our particular initiatives, because I think it is important, and then perhaps just some closing comments. This is an initiative in training. And I think one of the things where the alliances really have a great deal to offer our institutions and the sector as a whole is through joint training. And this is also joint educational provision, if we like, it's joint learning, but at a different level for a different group. So we have a training program run by experts in joint program development, both for the academic teams looking at the curricular design and for the professional teams who are going to run the administration of these programs afterwards. And they're on 2 levels where we run through the whole basics. What do you have to bear in mind? How do you develop a consortium agreement? How do you set fees? If anyone has an answer, I would be delighted to hear it, and so on. So this really, and this is an ongoing program. And I think it is an important initiative, which is why I bring it to the table today. And I would also like to bring, I don't have a slide, but just listening this morning to others. We also have in our 22 to 26 work plan, the design, and it's now designed and implemented, of an ARCUS label. So the ARCUS label picks up on this idea of excellence in jointness, and it is awarded joint learning provision, which fulfills a series of criteria. Now, of course, they're not exactly the European degree level criteria because we started before, but they are similar, and I imagine they will now evolve to make sure that they are compatible. Together with a mention, which is what we give to the students who complete those programs. So we have a label for programs, And can I just say here, and I'm picking up again on something that Olga said at the beginning, and I think Mark also picked up on, and that is these are not only for full joint degree programs, but they are for all of our joint educational provisions. So our BEEPs, our MOOCs, our summer schools, our micro-credentials, and so on, which is where I believe, in fact, we can be much more transformative. I think we are sadly in need of this transformation. And I will leave it there. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope this is a good start.
I am
Our conversation.
convinced. Thank you so much, Dorothy. And we will move now to a more roundtable setup. So I'm inviting Romita Iucu from the University of Bucharest, CIVIS, Dorothy Kelly from the University of Granada, Alliance, and Patricia Pereira, yes, from the Portuguese Quality Assurance Agency to join me for the roundtable. And let's see. I think I'm going to pick up on something that you mentioned because we already agreed that this would set the stage for our discussion. And I'm wondering about the training, staff training, because I saw a lot of people are writing that down. Yeah. And so I think the audience wants to hear more about that. But let's see if we can all offer our take on this matter, because there's a lot of discussion in the European alliances universe, constellation, however we want to call it, about this need to have a specific type of professionals dealing with everything we're doing, because this is a new type of international collaboration. It's not the traditional international collaboration, it's a bit more than that, or not necessarily more, but different. So if you could all share your insights on the need for this type of additional staff training or complementary staff training for joint programs, but maybe extrapolated to joint cooperation across borders in alliances.
You want me to?
Since you brought this,
That's pretty obvious what I think, right? Because I brought it to the table. To me, it is absolutely right. One of our actual universities' individual context is very often professionalization. And it is something that universities, and that's without alliances, that universities need to address in a systematic fashion. So that said, the alliances are a different context. And they are a context which challenges the way in which individual universities and individual people at universities have been doing things all their working life. Yeah. It challenges academics, but it also challenges very much professional staff at universities. So it is extremely, extremely important to help our staff to understand that the way they have always done things is not one way to do things, that there are many, many, many ways of doing things, that they all work, that we should trust. Peter, I seem to agree more with you that trust is still essential here. That we should trust the way other people do things. Mm-hmm. So it's not Obelix, these Romans are crazy. No. Different systems evolve in different ways in different national contexts, and they make sense in the national context. So I think firstly, we need to help our staff to understand that, but then we also need to help our staff to see how do we overcome this very national mindset. And this is culture change. And I think that's the big thing that the alliances really need to be looking at. How do we overcome this very national approach to look at a joint approach, something that we can do together better than we do on our own? I think I'll stop there. Okay, thank you. Thank you for this.
Or
yes.
variation or vocal alternance that Thank you very much. Always, it's a great pleasure to share the stage with Dorothy and with distinguished colleagues. I am representing here today CIVIS Alliance. Sometimes I had the feeling that I'm also representing UNITA in some way. I'm very much confident that cooperation internationally, it's a matter of trust. As previously Peter was learning us from many 20 years. I remember first time when I met Peter, when we started to discuss about the Bologna process. That's very important to know for the people who are not aware about that. Okay, the Mr. Papillon, it's there. The gesture of Peter was clearly always we have been usual with the Peter's Papillon and the ideas as well. He was an important player of the Bologna process. Without Peter and the management of the leadership of the division, the commission structure at that time, perhaps we not be able to succeed on the Bologna process. And I take advantage to have you. Thank you so much again. Coming back, you mentioned trust, you mentioned culture, professionalization in a way for the new roles. That's the reality. We are dealing in this moment with the new reality in European higher education context. It's a matter of continuity with the Bologna process because the Bologna tools are acting, but this is the political way for us, for people coming from the academic context. Only the Bologna tool are tools, if a way, because you are using the entire package. It's not enough to approach this. And I fully agree that you propose a program for training, for professionalizing. It's fantastic. You mentioned also a very important word, enthusiasm, which is based on trust and mutual cooperation, understanding. As me, sometimes I'm feeling that I'm CIVIS, sometimes I'm the Hevildak, I'm UNITA, University of Bucharest, University of West Timișoara, and we are playing because for you for all always I know. Thank you so much. Poor guy is missing. If not here, please don't tell us. It's fantastic. Yeah. But this is the new reality. We should play in different orchestras with different instruments, but in the same metaphor, the music which will be harmonically and of course good listen to all the people, to all different categories of audience, starting from the traditional students, Peter, and we just reflecting on the back on that category, and the new one, the non-traditional students. We should be very ready. And your presentation, Dorothy, was open the door to some other thinking or reflections way when the non-traditional students are invading us in a way. We don't need to wait to be invaded. We need to be open to invite and to be ready for adapting our reality, including European degree as well, arrangements, flexibilization, and whatever will be done for this new reality.
Thank you.
Well, I can only speak from the regulator point of view.
We need that perspective.
Yes, yes. So actually, we are getting people to be specialized in joint programs in European approach, and because in Portugal until last year, it was impossible to do the European approach process. And we have implemented that. So it was a major breakthrough in our way to actually get the European spirit of it integrated. Regarding trust, of course, we are an ECAR registered agency. So we recognize the decisions made by our partner agencies. So we don't have to go through again and do an evaluation process on that study program because, well, it's recognized. And basically, we are only approaching now the quality for alliances. Yes. So it's still very, very at the beginning. But we are fully familiarized, and in terms of label, I think A3ES could perfectly issue it, or give the or approve the institutions to give it, depending on the case of which partner or which organism is chosen to award the label. We have seen before there was a doubt between the higher education institutions or the agencies. So
I think the good part in this is that we're all in it together.
Yes.
And we're all learning by doing. And I think in this manner, we should all accept the failures, learn from them together, universities, other stakeholders, but also build on the successes. So this is, I think, important for the higher education system overall, that alliances are piloting, making mistakes, having various successes, but everyone is benefiting from this in the end. But trying to move to a more difficult question, and not on this necessarily positive perspective that I'm feeling here, about trust and enthusiasm. What do you think are the major readiness gaps do you see now in higher education institutions related to the European? We can start maybe.
It's regular.
Yes,
I just wanted
yes.
to answer in a way not very particular or familiar with the new European approach context. I was appointed as the vice rector of my university in 20, I don't 20, how much, a longer time when the Borussia process was starting. I've been the vice rector and I was taking in my hand the responsibility to change the curricula. At the level of the University of Bucharest, I've been very young at the time. This is a personal history, but interesting lesson because you mentioned, my dear Andra, about the lessons learned. And I was attending a meeting in Brussels, managed by Peter, as at the time, do you remember? No, that's not a secret, it's a reality of the time, about the ways of implementing the Bologna process, as a code. You could imagine how many people were against the Bologna process at the time, restructuring studies, giving another alternative, another landscape, another architecture for what's happening in the time. And I'm sure that more than 20 years ago, the institutional readiness was more or less lower than it is in this moment. If I'm just comparing what's happening in the university when we're starting to implement the new education, European degree or new educational reform, curriculum reform, because it's quite similar in a way with the Bologna process. If you are just going to compare, more technical, the Bologna based on tools, as previously mentioned. Here is a political a little bit more bottom-up in a way, because we are experimenting, piloting, validating, all are them on the arena, playing on this game. And finally, in a comparison which placed me in more than 20 years ago and now, I think that in this moment, institutionalization process but not the professionalization process on the European context are favoring a little bit the context of approaching with level of readiness which is higher than the Bologna time. That's my answer. I'm not sure if there are any people are just sharing the same thoughts. But it's important to be aware that universities are ready because of the alliances. That's the answer. 4 years ago, the situation was completely changed, but now we have a huge advantage and we need to look to this competitive advantage for implementing something in a very constructive way. Everything is linked, dear Andra, more or less not with the political question, but the psychological, psycho-emotional enthusiasm, readiness. All of them are managed in a way by commitment, by trust, by confidence, and the rest of the word motivation, which are more important. This is a tricky one, motivation. I'm not. Please don't ask me on which way we could operationalize motivation.
That's because I was wondering how do we resolve the tensions between, some years that are more enthusiastic and some years that are less enthusiastic in terms of politics, but not only. Even internally in our own institutions, there are tensions between ambitions and capabilities, but I think we're all trying to resolve these tensions as good as possible. Maybe if Patricia and or Dorothy would like to
Go on. I think it's interesting to hear the side of the institutions.
Readiness gaps. Transnational universities is not an easy task. They are very, very complex institutions.
you're very diplomatic.
Yeah. I was born in part of the UK. Yeah, but it's true. It is
Yes,
very, very difficult to move. And not just because they are traditional, but because they are complex. Universities are composed of so many different structures and so many different cultures within an individual university, but this is very good. So, and then if we look at our national systems, and just a quick look at the EUA scorecard, how much autonomy does a university have? So some of our systems, the universities are quite autonomous. So universities can take decisions and move forward. But in many, many of our systems, autonomy is quite limited. There is a lot of regional, there is a lot of national regulation, which makes it very hard to change. Sometimes universities are very comfortable in that. But I don't have to change because I can't change, because the legislation doesn't allow me to change. So, sorry, can't do it. These are, I think, also attitudes that form part of this readiness gap. And then individually, as you said, within universities, you can have a very forward-looking senior management team, but if you don't get the academics on board, if you don't get the professional staff on board, so motivation, then again, this is part of the readiness gap. I think this is one of the reasons why it is also so important to involve the community as much as possible. So, and because this is culture change. It's not changing structures, it's not changing regulations. I mean, obviously we have to do that, but the most difficult change is the culture change, it's the mindset. So, I mean, even things like joint programs. So there's mobility, there's compulsory mobility. We had a long discussion about this in the Parliament. Should physical mobility be compulsory in joint programs? I'm not going to open the debate because it's in the
If you want.
So
we might be here all day.
But we could talk an awful lot about what does mobility mean in a joint program, and how do we fund that mobility? Because the structures for all of our mobility programs have been set up for the bilateral mobility, which we choose. You have a home university, you have a host university. The home university recognizes what is found in the host university, hopefully. In a joint program, that's not the case. There's no home university, there's no host university. The students belong to all of the universities. And of course, there are different forms of itineraries and so on and so forth. But all of the universities who award the degree are in some way home universities. So, this is a readiness, which is not at the institutional level. It's not at the national. It's actually at the European level. So, there are all sorts of readiness across the board.
Okay. Some quality assurance.
Well, it's not a matter of readiness, it's to talk about this. It's the national legislation, which is still stopping us from accept different kinds of constructions, curricular constructions. I mean, I was talking to Romita, and we have, for instance, a legislation that says that a curricular unit cannot have only has to have multiples of ECTS of 0.5. So if you have a curricular unit with 3.1 ECTS, it is not accepted by the Portuguese legislation. That is being changed because the government is changing the rules for degrees, and hopefully that will be accounted for. But yeah, those kind of things are actually what keeps us from being totally ready and in the full European spirit, you know. So, but hopefully
I
it
think
will
this
be.
is the spillover from alliances is coming into play.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have also something that says that in some masters, there's a dissertation, training, or project has to have a minimum of 30 ECTSs. So all of this restrains the actual acceptance of more flexible curricular plans and study plans. That's it. Hopefully it will change soon.
But you shall master a very important word, which is flexibilization. This is a gold standards of just looking forward to European degree as well. It's so important to treat all the new realities which will be arranged or designed with the philosophy of flexibility to arrange, because the students are, we should be aware that we are preparing everything in accordance with academic standards, but at the same time, we need to go back and to look farther to the students' needs. They will expect more flexibility, adaptability, to have inclusiveness, but in no other way. In CIVIS, we invented, because the case of CIVIS will be presented later by Alexandra, the head of educational unit in CIVIS. But just referring to a discussion, we discussed about the new reality of inclusivity in higher education and in European alliances. And during the meeting in Rome, in the CIVIS days, we have launched the concept of transclusivity, which is more than inclusivity. It's inclusivity for giving to the students access to higher education, but in the same time, chances to success during the academic, in being very adaptable, being customized, in line with the needs psychologically, and evolutive learning gaps, and learning becoming a very important also reality for us. And that's the sense. It was, of course, a reality which was a little bit adapted, but there is not this kind of word, and we don't need to invent something which is describing a reality. It's nice to discuss about flexibility.
I think it's a good word. It's a good concept. We should work on
That was
work on
written
the
down.
first rounding. Yes, sit down, reflecting on it later on in the airport or wherever.
Yeah.
Thank you for these very inspiring answers. There was a mention this morning in Olga's intro, because we keep coming back to it, about doctoral studies and the link between the European degree and doctoral studies. Do you think you could elaborate on this based on your experiences, and or just share an opinion with us on how the European degree or the European label could support joint doctoral studies?
I would hope very much that it will support joint doctoral studies. It's true that the doctoral cycle is a different cycle, it's a different kind of cycle. It's interesting, I sometimes hear colleagues around Europe saying, of course, the European degree is not for the doctoral cycle. Of course it is. Of course it is. Of course it is. Of course it is. That's why there's even a separate, mention of EQF8 in the whole in the whole document. So I am hoping that it will serve. And yeah, but we do have issues. We do have to, if I may, in our midterm review process, in our case, There was even a question from the evaluators about whether or not the doctoral cycle was an educational cycle or whether it was research. And if it's research, why is it in Erasmus Plus? And, you know, so these issues are still there. And I do hope that the European degree label, as it has brought in EQF8, will help us around that. It is also true, however, that the approach to doctoral education is still very different. Despite the Salzburg principles, despite the Council for Doctoral Education, despite the efforts that have been made, there is still huge diversity in the way, perhaps a lot less than EQF 6 and 7 because of the Bologna process. EQF 8 somehow still has this big diversity. So hopefully it will help us.
Because sometimes it seems like the European degree is the objective. And we feel like we're going to stop there.
If you are in
just
line
seeing
with,
it like a piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. If you are just agreeing that we are in line with the Bologna process, then the Bologna is establishing that doctoral studies are the part of the cycle of studies, bachelor, master's, and PhD as well, then definitely 100% the answer is yes, we need to go forward with this reality, which is a research-based reality, but in the same time, educational reality as well, because they should be trained, they should be professionalism is a normal campaign for studying and training. And one solution in our case was to follow doctoral pathways, which is called Doctor Europeus, which is a new route already used in that, and they have a good example, a good case study. If you just like to ask Alexandru Karcic, my PhD student, he will defend the thesis in 12th of December on the Doctor Europeus route, which is a normal one. It's not called experimental because it's not similar with what's happening in our pilot project, but this is a reality which could be taken into consideration in a political sense, a very diplomatic way saying. That's the reality. But we need PhD also because we can introduce here some specific funds coming from external research articulations or synergies with that. That's the little gates away for that. And this is an exploration intervention, not definitely one in this case.
No pressure, but we will have.
No.
In your presentation,
You
take 5 minutes. Short.
I'm so sorry for burdening you with another task.
You know, being here with friends, I don't think you will mind. Yes, thank you for this. Jan, if you want to.
I think, it's very still in the beginning. I think we have one Portuguese institution thinking about doing a joint PhD, but everything is still at the beginning. I think people are going for the traditional masters because they are well established. There is practice, and they can be implemented shortly, rather than a PhD, because there's still a lot of work to be done until there is a basis of understanding.
Everybody wants to be the testing.
To be the leader on that, yes, yeah.
We're going to try now.
Yeah. I think we are the ones that are supposed to be trying. Yeah. Okay. I have two more questions that were stemming out of previous discussions because I'm trying to keep a red line of today. And maybe it's of help since there are more alliances present here today. If we could go into a more practical approach on strategies to align curricula in alliances. How do we do it? What do we do first? How do we convince people to trust other people? Because, you know, there are different layers of trust. Sometimes some of the answers we receive from our colleagues are, yes, but this was a decision made by the management to join the alliance. I don't need to do a joint degree with this or that university. How do we resolve these tensions? And how do we align curricula across borders? Because sometimes this is a problem.
How would I not accept your proposal? To answer the first one, the question is in CIVIS, now I'm referring to CIVIS, we agreed, and this is officially, and we could also sharing a little bit later. We're starting with a program with 11 partners.
Okay.
11 universities.
Thank you for piloting this for us.
11 realities of readiness, because that's so important. And thank you. I really want very much to underline how so important was this topic, which is quite new, Andra. The readiness in the front of this reality. I've never been tackled with this kind of reality of readiness, or it's fantastic. And coming back to the CIVIS experience, that Alexandru will deepen telling you the entire story, in which way be negotiator between the 11 interests, 11 readiness, as I previously told, and finally to create the common understanding of the common goods, which will be not now. In education, we are not looking to a result which is very easy. This is why the politicians are sometimes just wanting to touch education, but they cannot grab it because it's so complicated. Education, it's just expecting results a little bit later on, of course. This was very, very difficult. Finally, this program is acting. The students are enrolled and they are starting to work, and we'll see the benefits. Until the benefits, we'll monitor the road, because we are now on the road. It's on the route, perhaps. What kind of vehicles are using for moving forward? It's another important question. But it's has not been very easy to create the readiness, which is not institutionally. It's an alliance readiness for this new reality, to accept, to promote. Don't remember in the past, do you remember the Bologna promoters?
Yes.
Bologna has invented a concept. The Bologna promoter, I remember a small pin in here. I've been so proud to put the pin. I was the Bologna promoter. This is as a souvenir, but this become a reality. Who's going to be the new alliances, new European degree promoters for managing this process of creating readiness? Fantastic discussion topic. Well,
sometimes and I'm going to give a personal experience. Sometimes some of my colleagues are telling me I'm acting like a priest.
Yeah.
In the university, spreading the UNITA, spreading the words. Going, speaking to students, speaking to staff.
And finally obtain the blend.
Yes. So it does feel like this type of promoter slash different type of activities, but I don't mean any disrespect, but just a comparison to the kind of time and patience we need to give to these processes in order to make them understandable to everyone, and also gain some believers to follow this, because in the end we cannot do all of this by ourselves. We need all to trust this process.
I think in that sense, it's very important to have examples of success. So once you already have some joint programs that are up and running, people start to see that it is possible, that it does work, that it has good results, and so on. So I think that's important. If I can just sort of address this. So which programs do you set up? You decide how do you run. In our case, we've taken this in two different ways. We show our famous content periods. In the first period, we were very top down. And the team, together with the rectors at the time, decided these are the three programs. So we knew, and we started them, we worked on them, and we set them up. In phase 2, we thought we're a lot more mature now. I think we were a little bit too early in deciding that. So now we're going to try a bottom-up process, and we're going to see what do our academics want to do together, and open an expression of interest and so on and so forth. That was a very long, complicated process. Also because, I mean, you will have people who do want to do this and who have colleagues in some of the Alliance universities they already know and they want to work with. But then it also has to fit into an institutional strategy. What programs does my university want to run? What programs has my university run? And so on. So it became very, very complex. And I think that I would say that for the moment, top-down still works okay. Although maybe I would have liked to say that bottom-up does work better. I think the other thing that has helped us here, I think there have been two things. One is that we do not expect all of our universities to involve in everything. I think you're really brave. It has been simpler, I think, for us to say, okay, these 4 universities want to do this, these other 4 universities want to do this, we move forward, we do it. The other thing we've done, which I think has also helped there, has been to define very broad thematic focus areas. And we try to associate the joint programs to those broad focus areas. In fact, we try to associate almost everything we are doing to these broad focus areas, because that also helps to create a community that knows each other better, trusts each other, and so on. So I think those are all. And then I would also say alignment. I'm not so sure that we're aligning existing curricula. I think we're looking for complementarity to create new curriculum. That would be my take on alignment. Yes. But of course,
We tried in UNITA the bottom-up approach with matching events with hundreds of people. It's a process. It's a long process. But it has its advantages, although it doesn't immediately deliver projects for joint programs, it does deliver initiatives for the intermediary steps.
Yeah.
So joint courses, BIPs, projects that are stemming from various people just meeting and so on and so forth. So in a way, it has an advantage, but it doesn't reach the goal that you were mentioning so quickly. Yeah.
The joint bachelor, it's
Yes,
so our flagship program started.
Yes, started in this type of a matching style. But it's not 7, like in your case, top down went directly with a bigger number, yeah. Would you like to?
Yeah, no, I would just like to give an idea.
Please.
Yeah, but
We're
hungry for a general comment, which is related to this as well. As I can see from an outsider, the European alliances are, as you said, Dorothy, they have to be superimposed to the institutional strategy. And after that, or on top of that, they have a burden, a chores burden regarding to the alliance. So they have the national duties and everything. And on top of that, they have the alliance ones. And what I've been seeing is that sometimes the communication does not flow. And so we put people working with goal, let's see, but they cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel, you know? So the vision is very focused. It's not an holistic vision. They do not know, if I do this, how am I going to contribute to the whole structure? And this, so actually, today we have lots of small farms within the alliances that only work in their small space, small cubicle, and the message, I think this is personal from what I've seen so far, the message is not spread in an effective way, in a global way, you know. So people need to have that feedback, and people need to know the motivation is that if you say to someone, look, if you do this, we will be able to do that. And then if we cannot do that, you give them feedback so that they can improve the next one. And I think this is missing a lot. And that's why we cannot have more the kind of cooperation, possibility of co-creation, you know. I think it's a problem of communication and passing messages.
Mhm. And maybe passing very immediate objectives to people without passing the vision.
Exactly. Yes, it's that focused vision saying you have this and that to do, the deadline is there, and that's it.
And if I may,
Yeah,
that is a
please.
product of project-based approach.
Yes.
And it does tend to create these little silos, and you know, I'm obsessed with my deliverable. And it's my deliverable, and I don't care about the rest of the, I'm exaggerating. But I think it is that there is a mindset that is linked to this project-based approach, which is negative for the entire.
I have a final question. Because and this question just came to me yesterday after being involved in a meeting on international students recruitment, so somehow related but not completely related to our topic of today, but then I thought maybe very related. Is the European degree label a tool for academic diplomacy in the world, and will students from other parts of the world come to Europe to study in order to receive a European degree?
I
Do we
already,
want that?
I already answered to this question during the Toulouse meeting. I remember well. I mentioned this new ways of diplomacy and the branding process for the European degree. And CIVIS as well, we putting on a light that also we discuss in UNITA, we discuss in Timișoara with the diplomatic representatives in Munich. It was a fantastic meeting organized there. Yeah, 100%. This is a matter for the future diplomacy of the academic European environment when the competition will be launched. And the competition is starting, and now we have to look to our competitive advantages. And if the European degree will become one of them on the priority list, and I'm sure that I will give you an example, the 3C Master. This is our project, our Jewel of the Crown in this moment in CIVIS. 11 partners joined academic project. We already have, I don't remember, one of a Chinese student and
Oh, wow.
South America.
South America.
North America.
So it is.
That's an example. You ask us for examples. One kind of initiative is creating a fantastic bridge for internationalization. And if you are just going to export education, we are not going to compare with American branches in this economical, so more entrepreneurial approach, because European studies have not been created as entrepreneurial approach. Definitely, it's another concept philosophically. But the answer is from my side, 100%. Yes, this is an important tool for academic or soft diplomacy, but also by or through a branding, very serious branding process.
Our experience would also be that joint programs that are up and running have been attractive to global students. from Latin America, from India, from China, from
I think
North
it's
Africa.
important.
I think it's important, but I do think we need to be careful not to assume that it is an automatic result.
Mhm.
So the first programs are attractive, but the results need to be good so that then this will continue and multiply and so on. So to me, I think we should be very, very careful not to assume. And sometimes I think in some of the documents, there is an automatic assumption that joint programs are internationally attractive. I think we
Yeah.
need to be careful. I think it is proving to be the case that the first programs are, but, let's be careful. And let's look after the baby
Yeah.
as it grows and make sure that it does grow in attractive.
Can I just say something?
Yes,
I want to
please.
say something.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. No, I don't know, for me, for example, because I was working in joint master for disciplinary alliances. And I don't know, for me, actually, it was a little bit not scaring, don't get me wrong with the word, but to the fact that it was more attractive internationally than maybe for European students. So at the beginning. And so actually we were trying in the second, third enrollment to make more attractive at the European level, because then it was more a way maybe for, of course, students coming from non-European countries to enter in Europe. And then there was all the program of visa. So for example, they were never getting at the university on the time when the lecture was starting. So maybe on the second semester, or maybe they arrive in December and in February, they already have to move to another university. So I think, I don't know, of course, the European degree level right now it's a way, it's a tool to make European education more attractive, and I really believe on that. But at the same time, I think maybe until now it's not ready yet, because there are all these kind of logistical structure to also support this non-EU students to come. So I don't know if the focus should be like right now that, I mean, the main focus. And then there was another thing, but maybe if it comes out later, I will tell, because now I forgot. It was on my mind, but I forgot it.
Peter,
Yeah.
do you want to close this?
Yes, I really want to close this,
Okay, good.
but in a deeper sense.
Okay.
Listen, we should count. Colleagues will talk about numbers, huh? And about the European students. We must count our blessings. We have three. You have the 400,000 individual study paths that the students find out with permission of their universities, 1, 2, or 3. And then they land their national degree, their local institutional university degree. 400,000 a year. Yes? Materially speaking, look at the study path of these youngsters. They are European programs. By definition, you look at them, very European. All the degrees delivered by European universities located in Europe are European degrees. Maybe not the one on the Ile de la Réunion, but even that. That's one thing. The second constat is that in the Erasmus program, as it is published a while ago, there's a new term there: joint study programs.
Yes.
That was the name of Erasmus before it started in 1986. The joint study programs are back, and look what they're about. Programs. They're not about this stupid certificate at the end, whether you call it European degree or double or single or whatever degree you call it. Combine the two, the 400,000 a year, with their fantastic study path. We all talk about student agency, but then we squeeze them into a joint degree. These 400,000 exist. We have the term joint study programs in the program, and what the Commission writes down normally doesn't disappear. Combine the two and allow the universities / alliances to self-award the label to the European joint study programs. And if you want to call them degree, you call them degree, but it's a metaphor. Just like the European University is a metaphor. It's not a European university, it's a metaphor. We say alliance, well, it's not even an alliance. If you look at the at the departments and universities, there's not an alliance of universities. It's an alliance of ad hoc agents within the partners. But okay, if you want to call it alliance, you call it alliance. If you want to call it degree, you call it degree. But I would be in favor for being European in content. So a European dimension for local programs, because, and the more the merrier. And it's not a problem that you have a 1 million European degrees, if you follow Peter. We have 1 million Gucci bags. And everybody is proud of their Gucci bag if they have a authenticity label attached to it. So it doesn't matter that it's many. We are doing things for many. We're doing not something for the elite. I love the elite. We have Erasmus Mundus, you have Marie Curie, we have the Joint Research Program. But if the Erasmus has this pretense, this claim to be inclusive, etc., well, the European degree, as we are designing it here, and Inga was stressing it, it's not for all the collaborative programs, it's not for Erasmus, it's not for this, it's not for that. So she was saying in public that what we are doing here is for 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of students. It's a homeopathic action. Now, we should, there's no need, colleagues, there's no need for a new legally established degree, which also, if you listen to Vanessa, should land not in the European directive or recommendation, no, in the national law books. So he has this dream that the 27 countries will, the French will change their law to add this degree to the, colleagues, be serious, huh? He said at a session in the square, my son started studying and in 4 years he will graduate, he will get his degree. 4 years. I will be 72. Listen, we have 400,000 European degrees. If you look from the moon down to the earth, and you see these kids running around, these are 400,000 European degrees, whatever you tell me that they are in formal sense. And Litouwen 60 degrees, there are 60 European degrees, because Litouwen is a European country until a gentleman in the Kremlin decides otherwise.
We'll end on
And
this note.
and ignore, last week was, please ignore the barriers.
We cannot ignore
No,
the
you
barrier.
can, if you stop thinking of this crazy idea of the boarding pass, the joint degree, if you forget the boarding pass and you go for what you said, align benchmark degree programs, what we should be doing in thematic European universities, then you can ignore the barriers and issue the national degree, which content-wise is a European joint study program.
Thank you. So focus on the European content and try to overcome the barriers.
No,
We agree on that? No.
Ignore the barriers.
You mentioned a small piece of truth. You mentioned about Gucci, but you after just presenting Gucci, you mentioned Gucci with an additional authenticity label. You remember? We need this kind of authenticity.
The label is fine, but not the degree.
European label, it is.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of you here. Sorry for going a bit over our time. You have a question.
No, it's not a question. I just wanted to add something. Sorry, I kept everything for the end.
Okay.
I just want to underline something that Romita was saying, and I think it's very important to stress it. He was talking about training the trainer at the very beginning of this conversation. And it's actually a topic that was also treated during the European Education and Skills Summit. And it was very interesting because one of the speakers said that like now staff professor teachers are often trained for non-existing class. Our classes today are very diverse. We have different students with different background, with different attitude or what they want to be in the future. So it's good to have our trainers that are going to give them not only the hard skills, so not to train them only on the hard skills, but also on the soft skills. Some trainers, some teachers who are also, let's say, very sensitive, only on a human point of view. So I think this is something that I really want to stress because it goes also well with what you were saying about trust, about flexibility. We need to be flexible. And I mean, and also the fact that we are here today, and thank you again for the invitation. It's interesting because we have different generation from, let's say, the Bologna promoters. Maybe one day we can be the EU degree promoters. So this is very interesting, and we are like also an example of flexibility, I think. This, and I also wanted to add something that Patricia said before about the communication within the alliance, that sometimes can be it can be improved, let's say, and that's also interesting from my point of view as project officer. So yes, this could be improved, and as Dorothy Kelly was saying, let's say this could be also like something to improve, to move from a project-based approach to an alliance approach. It's okay working in silos. I mean, it's good to help, to ask for help, to ask for opinion to the other work packages. I understand that everybody's focused on the work packages above all when it comes to the reporting and review, but also the communication has to flow. So this is something that is very interesting. And thank you again.
No, thank you for closing.
Thank you.
Coming back in 1 hour, online and offline as well, right? Thank you.